I'd like to do some more emails. I do have a couple, and I'm sorry if I didn't get to yours. This was an interesting thing, talking about just how much the podcast is spread throughout the world. I have listeners almost on every continent, in every country in the world. I haven't heard from Russia, but I have heard from China. Not that yeah, you know what I'm saying. It's everywhere. But this is sort of a weird one, because those of you who've been listening a long time, I don't even remember what episode it was, where I was in Washington, D.C., and I talked about being on a subway with some strange rural racists. And I just got this email. I literally just got it on July 23rd. Subject line, DC Metro Hillbilly. Dude, I was on the same metro train a couple years ago when that drunk hillbilly lady was talking about Obama having 666 on his scalp. What the fuck was that about? I also remember them trying to get the military guy to chime in, and he wasn't having that. I thought he was really diplomatic when he said he's all of our president. I felt like jumping into the conversation and breaking down the lady's crazy logic, but decided it probably wasn't worth it. The whole thing was pretty strange / disturbing / entertaining. I was actually thinking about that today. That's really strange. I just heard it on your show. I guess your fan base is getting pretty large if some random WTF listener was actually there during one of your stories. I'm actually on the metro commuting right now to work. Shit. I'm not made for a cubicle either. I know how you feel. Keep rocking, Mike. I guess he just listened to that bit about the cubicle thing, but that is so bizarre that retroactively he remembers being on that car, in earshot of that conversation that was not that loud, but it was enough to draw attention to it, and now he's a listener of the show. I don't know who listens to this show. And it's amazing to me that, what we're sharing here is some common thread of humanity, not political, ideology, not, a specific point, or angle, but just conversations about life. Here's another email. Subject line, Architects Love Marc Maron. Hey, Mark, I'm an architect from Montana. Myself and most of my architect friends listen to WTF regularly. I find myself in a lot of deep conversations that center around your podcast. Something about the work you do really resonates within the architecture community. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that connection. Maybe it's because we're all sad bastards that overthink everything. Take care, and thanks for the great shows. Shay. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the creative disposition. I'm really not sure. I'm just not sure. But I do know that many comics have been inspired to do podcasts because of the surprise success of this one. And one of those guys is Pete Holmes. Now, me and Pete have our thing. It's not tension. It's just a thing. See, I believe that that what Pete Holmes is, who Pete Holmes is something within me that I am too ashamed to put out in the world. So he's said that he's stolen my podcast. He said that publicly. He said it to my face. So I just have to accept that maybe there's a little of Pete in me just as much as there's a little of me and Pete. I don't mean that literally. All right, just back off. Let's get into this conversation with Pete Holmes, the host of his podcast, You Made It Weird. You like the headphones too?
I do. In fact, most episodes of my podcast lately open with discussions of parking, turning off phones, or whether or not they wear the earphones.
Yeah.
And if they don't wear the earphones, there's always a slight distrust of me, because I'm like, why wouldn't you want to? It feels like we're listening to the show while it's happening.
Well, that's weird, because I do the same thing. I'm talking to Pete Holmes on our 300th episode here, and I love the earphones.
Me too.
If I had a choice, I would be wearing earphones in life.
Me too.
But some people don't even think to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to regulate my voice if I don't wear them.
Right. You know what it reminds me of is old school telephones, like this telephone.
Yeah.
Like the nuance that you would get from like a headset receiver.
Oh, like hearing yourself in I never thought of that.
Those old girlfriend calls where you're just breathing.
Yeah.
You can't do that on a cell phone. You just be like, are you there? Is anyone there?
Yeah. You don't know if anyone's there.
Is this over? Back in the day, you could do that for hours.
But I bet you never thought that, at some point in your life that you'd be making these weird preferences around, earphones and having the skill set of doing a broadcast show.
Right.
I mean, you've been doing comedy how long?
A little over 10 years.
And you started in Chicago.
I actually started in Boston.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm considered a Chicago comedian because it was only a handful of times. I went up at the Comedy Connection and the Hong Kong, the Comedy Studio, of course. Maybe 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And my college once, and then I moved to Chicago. That's really what.
And then to New York.
Then to New York.
Because I remember seeing you heavy and sweating in New York.
Well, that was old Pete. That was a thicker Pete. There was a little more ice cream in the milkshake.
Yeah, and a little more sweat.
And definitely a sweatier guy, and definitely a much more. When you knew me, that was an interesting time for you to know me, because that was the peak of the religious time. So I would go up, and I was very clean, very Seinfeld.
Were you?
Yeah, I
maybe that's why I was just sort of like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah, well, people used to ask me if I was on drugs. I mean, because I was so positive, and like even more so than I am now.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I have more grit to me now.
Yeah.
And back then I was just like, I'm so glad to be here. I couldn't believe I was performing in New York. It was the Boston Comic Club.
Right.
I was going up in New York?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The first time I went to Stand-Up New York, I almost had a panic attack because I was like, this is where Seinfeld told Horny the story about the musician. It took me so long to adjust, and I paid everybody incredible respect.
Yeah.
I hope including you. And then also went up at the end of the night and told jokes about I had a joke about RoboCop and why do we Robo? What kind of time are we saving by dropping the T?
Yeah.
So safe. You
Right.
know what I mean? I'm not saying that's a bad joke. It's just the safest possible stuff.
Well, I mean, I think it was probably before you sort of owned the stage and were able to feel comfortable talking about yourself.
Yes.
Because you're a comic now, despite whatever resistance I had to you initially, has, you are able to, it seems like what's happening now, and I don't know what role the podcast plays in this, but that you're actually a crossover act. I mean, people don't realize that, that's a term that they used to use for black comics who, crossed over to white audiences,
right.
But there is now, alternative comics that can actually play a mainstream room.
Right, exactly.
You started in mainstream rooms, but you sort of associated yourself with the alternative comedy movement, and certainly by doing your podcast, with the Nerdist label and being part of that Meltdown Comics crew. I mean, you're sort of, you're part of the new breed that anchors alternative comedy, or what's known as alternative comedy in Los Angeles.
Right.
But you're also doing regular clubs.
Yeah. Really look up to those Bill Burr types, guys like you. Burr, of course. I think Burr is my number one example.
Yeah.
Louis, these guys that can do both. Well, we were talking about this off mic, was the idea that people are learning so much about how to be this more Maron-y sort of exposed comedian. You know what I mean? And I started by doing the RoboCop jokes and these observations. I had a joke about spill the beans. Where'd that phrase come from?
Right.
Someone spilling beans? Fine. It's fine. It did work.
Yeah.
But then that's learning how to paint photorealistically,
right.
I think. And I think that's an important part of a painter's training, if I'm going to stick
that's
with the
just
analogy.
learning the craft.
Learning the craft.
Right.
Just literally learning, because you're so petrified, it's so terrifying, and you're just kind of seeing what it looks like to tell a joke and to have it received and to wait for them to laugh and then try a tag. And then now I'm definitely trying to do more of that comedian who's a podcaster thing.
Well, now let's talk about that. Now, when I came into podcasting a few years ago, there were only a couple of guys doing it. There were definitely guys doing it before me. But in terms of my peers, there weren't that many comics doing it.
Sure.
And then I started doing it, and, I found that, I could talk freely and not be hung up on whether or not something's funny or whether or not it's fully thought out and just do a stream of consciousness thing.
Right.
Now, when did podcasts come onto your radar?
It's so perfectly that we're talking about this. It's so perfect that we're talking about this because as you know, and as I've never made any qualms about, I totally ripped it off from you. I've used the term Burger Kinging.
Yeah,
your McDonald's.
Franchise,
and then I was just
I'm not making money off of this franchise. But if you're going to use that term, you better kick me a few bucks.
You have served millions, though.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to flatter myself and say I'm Burger King, but all I did was I read an interview where you said that stand-up, and you had been doing stand-up you'll always have been doing stand-up longer than me.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was also true. And you were like, doing the podcast is as good or better than doing stand-up. Now, stand-up is such a sacred requirement.
Yeah.
It's a compulsion, and I mean that in a good way. I never want to sound like, oh, I'm addicted. I love being addicted to my work. And it's so therapeutic, and it's so connecting and enlivening and necessary for me. And then I read, and I knew you were that way too from our brief talks. And then you said that the podcast was sometimes better. So even what you just said there, not always looking for a laugh.
Yeah.
Good Lord, the funniest things are down those shafts where the walls are paved with no laughs.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you're just like, we never would have got here.
Right.
If there was a crowd here.
Right.
We never would have had the balls, or maybe, I don't know, the live shows are harder. But you're getting in there and you find something that's really precious
when
and
you're
special.
talking alone on a mic.
when you're talking alone on a mic.
Right.
I even just did a podcast and someone brought a friend, and I was like, even that energy is kind of fucking
because you
me
can't
up
help
right now.
but play to them.
I was playing to them. I was monitoring their coffee intake.
Sure,
I was seeing when they were texting.
As a comic that paid his dues, 2 people, that's a crowd.
That's a crowd.
Yeah.
And a tech. We have 2 people in a tech.
That's 3. Are you kidding me?
We're sold out. But there's a weird thing that what you taught me, and something that I'm very grateful for. I don't want to butter your bread too much, but actually I would like to butter your bread. It's your anniversary. You taught me that there's a real liberation to opening all the windows.
Right.
There are all these windows and parts of my psyche. When you met me, 24-year-old Pete, Pudgy Pete, was like so terrified of people actually knowing who he is.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, there's still things that I'm guarding. And
Right.
I'm a little uncomfortable if everyone know that. But it's this weird experiment, following your example of like, what would it be like to talk about my divorce? Something I never, people like do a one-man show. I was like, it's not natural.
Yeah.
I don't want to invite people to sit down, and I'm definitely going to talk about the divorce. But if it comes up and you start getting into it, people on my show, people that listen to my podcast know how many thrusts I lost my virginity with.
Uh-huh.
It was 6 pumps, and counting in as 1 and out as 2. So
at least you got to pump. So, some people don't even make it to pumping.
Yeah, there's a pre sort of period, and we talked when Judd Apatow did a live episode, we riffed about pumps. So I mean, shouldn't I be humiliated? It's not humiliating at all. It's liberating.
Well, I think that you and I are of a certain ilk that it's not everybody's cup of tea,
Right.
and it also makes people uncomfortable. But it is there's something about this medium that lends itself to that, and certainly a lot of people aren't doing that. Like when you say there are a lot of people that are going to do the kind of comedy we're doing.
Right.
I don't know that that's true. I think that what makes you or somebody that does the type of things that we're doing enviable is that other comics and even people say like, how do they fucking talk about that?
Right.
And they're not even afraid to talk about that.
But what's interesting about the podcast is that it does inform the stand-up as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know you'll relate to this, is if I go up, now there are people that listen to the show and they know everything. They know arguably more than my mother knows about me, or my brother or my friends. So if you go up, there's a premium on your honesty now. You can't even attitudinally be false. People will be like, that's not Pete. We came to see Pete. So like now the stand-up is being informed and improved, I hope, by the podcast. We were talking, this is what we were saying off mic, is we're worried, and you just alluded to it a little bit, that people starting out are going to start by getting up there and just being like, I don't know, 18-year-olds being like, my mother keeps waking me up. What the fuck? I don't know what this, maybe pump the brakes and start with a little bit more traditional stuff until you have something to say.
Figure it out.
The real tragedy is I didn't have anything to say until I was divorced. I really think that's true.
Well, I think that there are, events in people's lives that definitely, change everything. Yeah. And it happened with Louis. It certainly, happened with me. I was always sort of a revealer, but, until you're really handed your ass.
Right. You have nothing to hide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a humility to it. There's false humility, and then there's also sort of like confident strutting that's based in insecurity. But once you really get handed your ass, it's almost like a favor. Mm-hmm. Once your ego is leveled.
Yeah.
Then you're sort of like, well, I know who I am.
You die to yourself, basically.
Right.
And then all that's left is resurrection. People love resurrection.
Sure. It's really, it's very important to a lot of people. Resurrection.
Yeah. It's a big theme. Keeps coming up.
So you see yourself as the Jesus of podcasting?
Don't put Messiah in my mouth. I never said that. But when I got divorced, then I knew, this is going to sound cliche, but maybe cliches are cliche because they're real, is I didn't know what pain really was. That was a very sad, dark time for my life. And then I was like, oh, this is what everybody's avoiding. Yeah. This is what it is to go to a comedy show and laugh and forget your troubles. I didn't know what that was. Then all of a sudden I had some troubles I wanted to forget. And all of a sudden comedy was serving me. And that actually goes back to the podcast. The podcast is the most mutually beneficial thing where the audience enjoys it. And I know you get this where you get emails and you get people coming up and saying whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure people say, you've saved my life. You've improved my life. The Maria Bamford episode helped me realize I was in a codependent relationship and I was a codependent person. Got me going to Al-Anon.
Yeah.
Mike DiStefano fucking changed my life. This shit is happening. People who do my podcast, Gerard Carmichael is the episode that comes out today. And I was in a real rut with stand-up. I was going up and I was saying the words. I don't know if you've ever seen that game Rock Band, where you just have to hit the notes.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. I was going up and kind of speaking into a void.
That's when I just like lose it.
It's the worst. It's so lonely. You're like, this is my favorite thing, and I hate it.
Yeah, tired of me.
I'm tired of me.
Yeah.
And then Gerard, I don't know if you've ever had a conversation where you're just kind of like, oh, this person's saying what I believe so firmly, but I forgot back to me. And it just filled me with light. He was like, he was talking about the idea of going up and finding comedy and improvising and just following. He was talking about how on his set list he writes, keep going. Mm-hmm. His set list says, keep going. Mm-hmm. And as I was talking to him, just recounting it now, I'm getting tingly. I was moved. And it happened on Mike. You know what I mean? Like, you heard a man, me, moved by another man, and then he was moved. It ended up being this really beneficial thing for both of us. And then that night I went up and remembered myself. You know what I mean? And I felt planted again.
Yeah.
And this isn't just, I don't know what this says about me, but like now when I'm having a really great conversation, I'm kind of like, I wish this was on mic. This one was on mic. You know what I mean? And there is, this is going to talk about Messiah in my mouth, but there is a ministry to that. It did minister to me. I don't mean religiously, but it ministered to me. It addressed a real need. I was in a rut, and it saved my comedy, and then like the shows were better. And I hope people listening to it feel the same way.
Well, and I've had many similar experiences, with guests that have changed the way I've thought about stuff. And I guess that's what, the type of podcasting and comedy we're doing, but specifically podcasting, is that you and I need to talk to people to get a sense of who we are.
Yeah.
And we're sort of craving that moment. I mean, you've obviously, had a God in your life, and you pursued, God in your life, and we're going to pursue that, maybe for life. And it was a little more nebulous, but I always relied on other people to sort of like, feed, looking for these answers that is going to make my life, easier.
Right.
Or better.
Right.
Now, the word minister as a verb, how is that used in its within the church?
I think you would say, oh, Mark, you're such a good listener. That's a real ministry to me, or that's a blessing to me, sort of thing. But like a pastor would minister to his congregation, I suppose.
Well, I don't want to, say that the greatest effect that my podcast could have is that it actually helps people.
Right.
Because, and when you talk about ministering, I never thought that I would be that guy. Sure. And obviously, I mean, you were going to be a minister, right?
Yeah, my mom says I wanted him to be a youth pastor, but he's a comedian, and then she goes, close enough. Well, it is kind of. But you know what's funny? I'm not burdened by working for, I don't have to toe any line, you know what I mean? I can say whatever my truth is, my spiritual truth, my physical truth, that day, in that moment. Like, I just think it's absurd that a youth pastor could get fired because he doesn't toe the church's corporate line. If you said, I don't know if there's a hell, fired.
Right.
I think gay people are okay, fired. What if you're feeling that way? What if you believe that?
Right.
You have to, like I was at a church where the pastor had an affair and he was fired. You know what I mean? It's like, for sinning? You know what I mean? Isn't that what this is all about?
Where's the forgiveness?
Yeah, where's the fucking forgiveness?
So yeah. But that for me,
I think it's a little bit better.
Yeah, well, I think, but I never thought it would have that effect, because I'm a pretty selfish, self-involved guy and a selfish guy. And the course of the podcast, from the feedback I get, and the struggles I go through and how people relate to it, and you get these emails where it's like, you really got me through a dark time, you really helped me out. It's like, I feel like, I'm very grateful, and I'm amazed.
Yes.
That whatever I've been accused of, which is selfishness.
Sure.
That my struggle with being me in the world is helping.
It's a type of alchemy.
Yeah, hundreds of people.
We both. Look, I don't want to put myself. I have such reverence for this show. I don't want to put myself in that boat, but allow me to. We both turned selfishness, a little inwardness, a little navel gazing.
Yeah.
Into something that actually is helping people. Like, talking about my divorce, I just had Mike Burns on the show. He talked about his divorce. He talked about wanting to die. We both had this moment where we discussed the moments in our lives where we wanted to die. Yeah. Something I never thought I would ever confess. Being as put together and hey as I am.
Right.
Talking about being at a sushi bar in the Midwest and just wanting to die. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't colorful. It was just a feeling of like, oh, dread. This is dread. I'm in dread.
Yeah.
He talks about a great story on the episode. And then when we got off, I said to him genuinely, I was like, I know you think we were just talking, but you did a good thing. That's a good thing that you gave people. And then here they come, the comments and the emails to Mike and to myself where they're like, this is what I needed. I was going through this today.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, we're not alone.
Right.
If there's a message to my podcast, it's that like, hey, look at me. I'm kind of like a CBS guy, you know what I mean? Just like a regular guy.
Yeah.
I like to think that I'm somewhat put together and friendly.
Right.
But I've done everything. I've jerked off on airplanes. I think about killing people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm here to say, use me, this regular guy, as the barometer to say you're not so fucking weird after all. And none of us are.
That's a great mission. And I think that, myself and you and some other people are using this medium in a way that promotes and encourages interaction, intimacy,
yes,
self-examination,
yes,
and also relief.
And the honesty. I know you get this. When now I tour, I never really, excuse me.
That's all right.
Never really toured before. And now I tour because I want to meet the weirdos. You have the what the fuckericans. I want to meet my weirdos, and they come out and they dive right in. I know you get this too.
Yeah.
Because people know your cat's name.
Yeah.
People, I told you that I know your neighbor's name.
Yeah.
The rotor. Yeah. All this intimacy.
Yeah.
So people are always apologizing, like I don't want to freak you out, but I grew up Mormon, and they just dive right in, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
This is what I want life to be. You think I want to talk about how the nachos are here or what you thought about the show? Tell me about what it was like leaving the Latter-day Saints. Let's get into it.
Sure, but make it quick because there's other people.
Are you going to buy a T-shirt? Fucking beat it.
No, but that's but not unlike, I try to be as available as possible in that moment.
Yeah.
And let them, and let people say their piece and have it. And because I don't know them, but I do know they know me.
Right.
And if they know me that well, they must relate to me on a certain level. And there's that weird moment where everybody seems familiar because they do know you.
Right. And I'm like, I sometimes joke that the podcast should be called Pete Needs Help. Yeah. I need help. How did you do that?
Yeah.
You have kids and you give of yourself. You know what I mean? Like, how are you balancing that? There's a real, we also call it what the heck.
Yeah. Well, no, and I know we've had our tense moments, but I'm very happy you're having such success with my show.
Yes.
And,
a lesser version of your show. If I may, I've said it before, but I want to say it again because it's your 300th anniversary. You've done something incredible for the stand-up community, but also for people. I always used to talk about civilians and comedians, and then those walls were broken down here. We're just talking about very similar people, whether or not they write down their weird thoughts and perform them or just have them.
Yeah.
Suddenly, people are being ministered by the show. I told you, it got me into Al-Anon. It got me doing all these good things for myself, having good conversations. It's helping comedy. It's making comedy better. We're talking about touring, and you look at the lineups.
Yeah.
That's what the fuck, man.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what it's like to be at the Comedy Works and look at the wall, and I'm like, this is us.
Yeah.
It's all us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So thank you. I'm incredibly grateful. It's a privilege to rip you off.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say for the record, I was like, oh, it would be good for me to foster, try and be like, oh, Maron hates me or whatever.
Yeah.
It's never been the case.
Nope.
You've never been anything but supportive. Hook me up with my T-shirt guy. Yeah. You did email me once and was like, is there anyone on my show that you don't have on your show? And I thought, because you've been so nice about it.
You need email addresses of anybody that's been on my show that hasn't been on yours.
Yeah.
And you thought like, he's trying to help me out.
I thought you've been so kind, top to tails, that I was like, I can't believe this. Thank you so much. I'll let you know.
And I was taking a shot. Yeah. I was like, he didn't even, that's so Pete. Like he just completely absorbed it. I'm like, oh my God, he's trying to help me. Mark would never do that to take a shot at me.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That was the lovely, annoying, but very sweet Pete Holmes. I swear I say annoying with a big heart. I do like Pete. There's just something about him that reminds me of some part of me that I don't think I've accepted yet. Is that wrong? Is that a horrible thing to say? But Pete talked a little bit about, the connection you make and how helpful it is, and the idea of ministering or the idea of helping with this thing, which was a surprise result of my podcast. And I can't say enough how much it moves me to get emails from you guys about how the show moves you. This one has the subject line therapy, and this is something I've talked about before. Dear Mark, I just read the interview you did with Jada Ewan for New York, and I wanted to chime in about your disdain for people referring to your show as therapy. I can see why you're offended by it. The idea that we can't have conversations anymore without classifying them as something else, as something that isn't normal, that absolutely is condescending. But when I think of your show as therapy, I think of it as something that is therapeutic, something that helps me get through my day. Listening to people talk about real life is a therapeutic thing. I don't think of it as you and your guest in a therapy session, but as something to learn from. It helps a lot of people put their problems into context and helps them see things in themselves that they didn't even realize. I know that's what it does for me. Maybe it shouldn't be treated as something out of the ordinary, but it is. And because of that, I think your show is important. The term navel-gazing, on the other hand, I agree, that is total bullshit. Be well, Aaron. I can accept that, and I appreciate that, Aaron. Yes, I think that is a way of looking. Therapeutic is not therapy. I'm not in therapy. I'm not a doctor. I'm not running therapy sessions. But I do know that the show is therapeutic to people, to the point where this was one of the more mind-blowing emails I ever got, and quite honestly, incredibly flattering and humbling in a way. Hello, Mark. The interview with Todd Hansen is one of the most powerful narratives of depression and suicidality I've encountered. My hope is to make it required listening for the first-year medical students here at the University of Vermont. The course, Professionalism, Communication, and Reflection, is the place in the curriculum where the medical students stop to think and talk in small groups about what they're doing and why. Reading or listening to patient narratives is a frequent activity in the course, and so it's a perfect spot for WTF to make an appearance. If we can pull this off, I'll certainly let you know how it goes. I'm a longtime fan of WTF, naturally. Thanks for your magnificent work illuminating the dark places. Lee. That to me is better than a Peabody. And also what's very important to me and has always been important to me, I just never thought it would happen this way, is the respect of my peers and the respect from the community of comedians that I've been part of for more than half my life. And the respect I have for Andy Kindler is far beyond anything. I just, to me, he's a perfect comic. He's naturally funny. He respects and honors, where he's come from. And he's just a great comedic voice, and he loves WTF. And I just wanted to talk to him about that. So let's go now to my conversation with Andy Kindler.